mix of timing, luck, and privilege, I had landed this West Wing position, where I saw up close how the government documents a president's time in office. Every staffer's email is public record, every photo is archived, and every piece of paper is preserved under the Presidential Records Act. These materials are eventually administered by the National Archives and Records Administration and become primary sources for future generations. Sometimes I would imagine historians reading the book decades later, trying to reconstruct Obama's 8 years. But as he entered his second term, it occurred to me that comparatively little had been done to document the campaign that put Obama in the White House. Aside from memoirs by the campaign leadership, few had recorded what it felt like to live through the experience in their own words. The reflections of organizers and volunteers, the majority of the people who made up the effort to elect America's first black president, would likely be lost to history. Only 5 years after his inauguration, the victory that had seemed so improbable at the outset was becoming more inevitable in the retelling. The outcome of the 2012 campaign had already reshaped the meaning of 2008, a trend likely to accelerate with each passing election cycle. Friends' oft-told campaign stories began to strain credulity, emitting moments of hardship or doubt. It was easy to see how decades of nostalgia might erode the details and reduce their recollection of the experience to, 2008? It was great. We changed the world. That's why this was my final trip as a White House staffer. With no other appointments demanding the president's attention, I'd been given a chance to tell him about the project that compelled me to leave 3 years before the end of his term. "Well, sir, it's an oral history project to document your 2008 campaign," I said. "I'm leaving to collect interviews with alumni, starting in Iowa." In the early days, presidential campaigns attract dreamers. Every 4 years, ordinary Americans invest their hopes for the future in a new candidate for president. Despite the stereotype that politics is a cynical quest for power, for thousands of volunteers and activists, campaign field work is an earnest act of blind faith, the belief that your labor might alter the trajectory of the most powerful country on earth. Nowhere is that sense of possibility greater than in Iowa. The Iowa caucus is an election process different from other states. The caucuses reward grassroots activism, local organization, and community deliberation while offering everyday people the chance to rigorously vet each candidate. Although its predominantly white, older, and rural population doesn't much reflect the diversity of the national electorate. As host of the first primary contest, Iowa is where presidential dreams take root or die. It was in Iowa, during his first trip as a presidential candidate, that Obama referred to himself as an imperfect vessel for your hopes and dreams. That was especially true for a group Obama called the Kids, the young volunteers and staff who joined his campaign from far-flung parts of the country in 2007 when he was still an underdog down 20 points in the national polls. I was one of them. Over the course of 11 months, more than 200 of us embedded across 99 Iowa counties to build an organization of local volunteers. Our mission was to finish first in Iowa in hopes of proving that Obama could remake the electorate by attracting new voters and that an overwhelmingly white state would support a black candidate for president. On January 3, 2008, Obama's victory in Iowa shocked the country, validating a risky campaign strategy and providing momentum for the remaining primary contests. But to Obama, the experience was more than just another campaign win. It was a test of his most fundamental belief about democracy, that in the face of long odds, ordinary people can bring about change. Primaries are often covered as national competitions, but they're also sequential, and each one counts in its own way. When the Iowa caucuses ended, Obama's organizers took what we had learned and went national. Most of us joined up with counterparts in other early states, New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina, hopscotching across the country every few weeks through a new primary. That summer, transitioning to the general election, volunteers and staff set up shop in areas uncontested by national Democrats for decades. Longtime conservative strongholds like Indiana, Virginia, and North Carolina, to register new voters and build neighborhood volunteer teams. By the end, 6,000 organizers were managing tens of thousands of trained volunteer leaders. And on November 4, 2008, that work culminated in Barack Hussein Obama, a black man campaigning to lead a nation founded in part on the principles of white supremacy, earning more votes for president than any candidate in American history. When President Obama is asked about his 2008 campaign, this is who he talks about, his volunteers and his organizers. Many of the people I met over those 21 months were natural organizers. I was not. I would equate long hours with productivity, skipping meals only to binge on cinnamon rolls and cake when my blood sugar dropped. The basic duties of a campaign organizer, cold calling strangers and showing up at their door, made me deeply uncomfortable. But the cause was all-consuming. Raw enthusiasm eventually infused me with a self-confidence I'd never had before, and it proved contagious around volunteers. "We're making history," Iowa State Director Paul Tews, a veteran campaigner, kept telling us. I believed him. Later, when I was working in North Carolina during the general election, I would tell